And welcome back to the Real Estate Revival Podcast. And today we've got an incredible episode with an awesome human all the way from Moncton, New Brunswick. We've got the one and only Shawn Gunther. Here we go. Welcome, Shawn.
Hello. How are you today?
Good to have you, man. Welcome to the Revival Podcast. It's so glad to have you. We're going to have a fun episode.
Absolutely.
Is it true that Moncton is one of the happiest places in Canada?
I'm going to have to go ahead and say no.
Shawn, let's kick this off here, man. You've had a really cool journey, and you are live right now actually from Arizona. We're doing a cool experiment called Deal House, and that's a whole thing that we've got on the go with a bunch of awesome students. But Shawn, I'd love to kick this off here. You've been in real estate for the last few years, and it's really cool how you got into real estate. Can you give us some of your background and what drove you to get interested and active in the real estate space?
Yeah, for sure. So you know the story very well. So I started out in the oil field, and anybody who's ever been out there or knows someone who's been out there, it's not really much of a life, right? Like we're out there in all types of weather, extreme weather, just working really, really hard. Often very isolated away from our families, and that I have wife, young kids, and that was really difficult. To live that way all the time, right? You want to be home, you want to be with your family. So I got the idea in my head one day that I'm gonna be a house flipper. Watched a lot of HGTV back then, right? And thought that was the play. Had some construction experience, and as I was kind of going along that progression to try to find out like how you do this as a business, I learned about wholesaling, and then of course joined a bunch of other communities that all just overpromised and underdelivered. And then in one of these American communities where they're talking about wholesaling, I think someone just eventually took pity on me and said, hey, if you want to actually learn how to do this in Canada, I know a guy you got to talk to, and gave me your name. So I'm pretty sure at that point I had, I think I sent you a Facebook message, tracked you down on Facebook and said, hey man, I heard you're the person to talk to if I want to do wholesaling in Canada. I don't know if you know this, but we're best friends now.
That is exactly how that happened. And it was like a Dumb and Dumber moment, like me, you, me you, me, you. It was like that kind of moment. And back then I was a little crazy, probably still a little bit crazy. But when I started wholesaling, I was like, Shawn remembers, I'm like, this is going to be really fun. Why don't I build a character that's really interesting, and let's call him the humble wholesaler. And so I went ahead and I bought a gold suit from Amazon. I'm like, this gold suit is awesome. And then it came in the mail. First time I wore it, I decided to wash it a bit and it turned green. So that's crazy. I ordered a chain. I was like, I'm going to create this character, the humble wholesaler. And this came because one of my buddies, Matt Pichet, came to my office with a group of other guys. And Matt said, we all have these nicknames, and I'm the fruitful investor. I'm like, well, that's an interesting name. And he said, who are you? Well, what's your nickname? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just a humble dude. Like, I'm just a regular guy. And so the humble wholesaler was born. And so I ordered this humble chain, and I'm like, this is going to be a great chain. And it came in the mail, and I paid $100 for this chain, not thinking for a second that it's actually going to be a real, like, basic little whatever it was gold chain. And so it was this tiny. It was like 2 inches by 4 inches. I thought it was going to be a big hip hop chain. It wasn't. And so I got this like full out gold tracksuit, and I created the humble wholesaler. And so Shawn was like, hey man, I heard you're like the #1 wholesaler, and I'm over here doing rap videos like, I am the humble wholesaler, gonna get them deals done. No jokes, just wholesaling. I grind every day, closing and getting paid. I always stay humble, helping sellers every day. That's what I was doing.
Well,
and so Shawn's like, we're best friends now. I'm like, you're a backup dancer.
Well, I never saw those videos before I reached out to you. I'm glad I didn't. I might not have.
Good, we buried them. But anyways, you were like, I want to do wholesaling. And back then, we were flipping properties. We were flipping 30 plus properties a year. And then we ran out of inventory for our team. And so we had a dozen people on staff, and we're trying to keep them employed. And we ran out of properties. And somebody told me, hey, you need to learn wholesaling. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. And he's like, well, you have to go direct to seller, and it's the marketing and the sales side of real estate. And if you learn that, you can buy properties. So Shawn, what was it for you that you're on the oil rigs, you're away from family, you're probably driving you crazy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What were you doing? Were you just on the rigs, like watching videos on YouTube, like while you're there on your off day, or when were you consuming content and thinking about this?
Whenever I had time, right? So, obviously we were out there doing 12-hour shifts, but, I had my laptop back at our camp room, right? So I would sit there and I would look at videos. I'm pretty sure I tuned into a bunch of these calls even from camp when I could, when we were available. But, I was just looking at all the different information, thinking about it, trying to learn, consuming as much content as I possibly could. And then, we had the old COVID start up and the whole world shut down. So that was essentially, in my mind, my opportunity to really kind of push and get into this really deep because we weren't working. So it was, why not? And which I just basically learned all the strategies or, as much as I could and just put in a ton of action while I had the opportunity to. And, lo and behold, following this program, I ended up getting a wholesale deal. And my first wholesale deal, I made $30,000 and I never looked back.
It's amazing. Now, you were kind of studying and watching from the sidelines for a while. Like, how long did it actually take you from the time that maybe you met me to the time you did that first deal? How much time went by?
Roughly 6 months.
Okay.
And I would attribute that fully to me just not taking enough action.
Okay.
Right. Living it, a lot of scarcity and doubt and mindset issues and just different lifestyle altogether. Right. Like I can fully relate with a lot of you people like watching at home or on the call today because, you don't know what you don't know. Right. Like you assume things are a certain way or you've got to have certain things before you can really get going. And, it's tough. I find the hardest thing to do in real estate is to get over your own nonsense to go and take action.
What is it you think that, because you've been down this road, what are the emotions, the habits, and the beliefs that people engage in that sabotage their own results? What are those things if we can start pinpointing them?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely no psychologist here, but I mean, for myself, it was, just doubt, right? Like, because I think we've grown to be very doubtful of things and, assume things are a scam or assume that, that somebody can do it and they're special somehow, so we can't, right? And we put a lot of that, negative connotation on ourselves, and we believe just because we or somebody else can do it, they're better than us somehow, or they have some kind of skill or special thing with them, and it's not, right? And I think we all struggle a little bit in that way because we grow up with our families telling us that things are one way, right? Like if your parents grew up and the only thing they knew was how to go to school, get a good job, work, and save money, anybody telling you something different, because that's such a core to your core belief within your body and soul, because that's how you were raised, right? So that's a real struggle to get over. You really have to believe something different or be willing to believe something different, and I think a lot of people struggle with that because they just don't believe it's possible.
Yeah. The hard thing with Canada is what I'm going to call the Canadian identity. And so Canada is a fundamentally socialist country. And so there's some really good principles, I believe, in the ideology of socialism, which is fairness, equality, trying to make sure everybody gets a fair shake. And I think those aren't bad ideas. I think the way those ideas play out is not actually productive of the general thesis. Just like I was born in a communist country, and so the idea in a communist country is, well, you take all the assets away from wealthy people because they shouldn't have more than poor people. You give everyone a job, and so everybody's working now, but the doctor and the janitor make the same wage. And so it disincentivizes people from taking risks, going to school, doing more. And what happens is the decisions get made by very few people or one person at the top in a communist country. And so it ends up being a horrible way of governing.
Absolutely.
It just is, because the person with the most power gets corrupted, and power corrupts. And so when power corrupts, the person at the top starts to make decisions, not in the well-being of its people, but in the well-being of his own ideology. And we've seen that over time. And socialism is, what I've learned, is one step removed from communism, which is a crazy principle if you think about it. And so in principle, I love Canada. It's great. But the idea of socialism means that if you want to win in Canadian real estate, you really can't be a socialist thinker, can you? You have to be an opportunist. You have to be willing to take risks. You have to be willing to put yourself in a different financial thinking. You have to be willing to take action when others don't. And you have to be willing to stop listening to the 99% of people who are socialists. I'm sorry, but that's what it is. It is. You have to be willing to be a winner. If all of Canada is middle class, that's fine, but you have to be willing to be upper class, meaning in terms of wealth and ability and skill set. And you have to set yourself apart. So I'm curious for Shawn. Okay, what have you done to set yourself apart? Because, you know, you're a pretty diverse guy in terms of your mindset, in terms of your behaviors, your family. What do you think sets you apart from maybe most other Canadians that gives you an edge in winning in real estate?
I feel like, for one, I'm just so stubborn. I won't allow myself to quit. I'll burn the bridges behind me and just keep going. Like I had to develop that belief that I could do it and not give myself another option.
Why was that important for you, though?
Why was it important? Because it was everything. Like, my life before wasn't great. Like, I mean, we had okay money. Like, you know, the family didn't struggle so much. But I mean, it also wasn't, it was one sacrifice for another. And I wanted to not have to sacrifice that. I wanted to have it all. Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, and I used to think that you had to. And I mean, in some situations there, you know, the struggle or, you know, the sacrifice is, you know, necessary. But, you know, there's certain things that I just decided that I wasn't willing to sacrifice. Right. And now that I'm here and I can't even really tell you what would set me apart from someone else, because I consider myself to be the same as most people. Like, I think we all struggle with a lot of these things. And I think my exposure to you and this community and just the change in mindset over time is really kind of what got me to where I'm at today. Because if I hadn't had that influence, I'm not sure where I'd be.
So let's stay right there for a second. Influence.
Mm-hmm.
We're all being influenced by things every day. The media, our friends, our employer. People are speaking into our lives, and we have to choose what to receive and what to reject. Give us some insight from a person, you, who has chosen community and chosen to be influenced. Help us understand the real impact of that influence on your life and your thinking.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question. It's a good one. Yeah, like, I mean, so much, because before it was like I wanted to believe, but I didn't quite, right? But I was willing to put in the effort to see. And then after seeing that it's real and that it is possible, I think that was a huge, you know, catalyst for me to actually realize, like, hey, like, you know, the thing that I thought was, you know, hard or wasn't possible or wasn't for me, it just expanded everything at once, right? And we also, you know, all the exposure to the different mindsets through a lot of the books that we would read, like, you know, The Slight Edge, Money People Deal. That was another one that from Stephen Arnio, a Canadian friend of ours and whatever. And, you know, Think and Grow Rich, all that stuff, Rich Dad Poor Dad, like all these books at the same time. And then kind of, yeah, I mean, I think it was a lot of things. And I think it was mostly just time and exposure that's really got me to this point.
I think there are three dynamics or three personality traits I've noticed in people. And when you combine these personality traits into a formula, I think it creates an environment for success. So here's the three that I think. There's the number one, you've got the optimist. And that's a person who has tons of optimism, sometimes to a detriment because they become they romanticize everything. And so that's kind of the negative side. But optimism is a very, very profound trait. Then you have the adverse, which is the pessimist. And that person always sees everything in a negative context. It's very difficult to be a pessimist in your life because it's very hard to create hope, and everything is negative and everything is fear. And the conditioning, we become obsessed with fear and become obsessed with pain and obsessed with suffering. And so there's that dynamic. And then you have the, we'll call it the middle ground, which is the realist. And so the realist cares about one thing, truth. The realist doesn't need to fabricate motivation. They also don't want to live in a false world of devastation. And so I think that you are very much in the realist category, but probably started from the pessimist category. And so I think that kind of defines you fairly well for I've known you now for a few years. And Shawn is a realist. I think if I'm speaking about you in kind of this context, you do the work because you fundamentally believe it's the best way for you to move forward. For you to win, for your kids to win, it's not about this hopeless romanticism about real estate, but it's about the practicality of real estate. So for you, I don't think it's theoretical. I think for you, it's very pragmatic. Like it either works or it doesn't work. It's either going to elevate me financially or it won't. And so, and if it doesn't, I won't pretend like it will because I'll lean towards the pessimistic side. Mm-hmm. And so I don't mind when I meet a pessimist, because a pessimist can convert into a very practical realist. And when they've done that, they're very, very effective because they're not operating under false context or pretext. They are just willing to do the work because they fully and completely believe that input equals output. So in your experience, I think I framed that pretty well. I feel like Jordan Peterson over here. Wow, just psychology blasting out of here. I feel like I framed that pretty well, and that's my belief on you. Can you give us maybe additional color into that, going from somewhat of a pessimist to is it a scam to being a realist, saying, no, it does work, and kind of going from unbeliever to believer in a process?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think even as a pessimist, you still want to believe, right? So, when you first get into something like this, like I think it was kind of a mixture of what I wanted and what I was doing, and realizing what I was doing wasn't what got me there won't get me to where I want to be, right? So there was definitely a mentality shift there. But yes, I very much agree with you on the realist part, because like I don't mince words. I don't waste time. I want to know the facts, and I'll discern for myself what's true and what's not true, through the information that I've gotten. And I think that's why I kind of ended up staying within this community, and then came back after, right? Because I see the truth here, and to me that's real. And like also being exposed to a lot of other people that do this over time, you really, when you start to see kind of the behind the scenes type of stuff, or people kind of shifting and being different over time, you really kind of see that there's a lot of fakeness out there, and a lot of people who aren't really being fully honest with who they are and saying the truth, right? And that's why I've always enjoyed your brand of teaching and all that, because there's no real fluff. There's some comedy mixed in, but general truth of how things are and what can be done. And you don't sugarcoat it. You tell everybody like, hey, this is probably going to be harder than you want it to be, but if you keep going, you'll win. And I 100% agree with that. And I very much agree with your analysis there, where it's like output equals input, right? So I very much believe if I'm willing to do the work and I'm willing to put in the effort, that I'm going to get an output from it, whether it's today, tomorrow, or down the road. I think the a lot of people who get discouraged here, it's 3 feet from gold, right? So,
Yeah.
and I really want all of you out there who are sitting on the fence, maybe you haven't gotten a deal yet and you want it and you're feeling discouraged and stuff like that, just keep going.
Yeah.
This works eventually, no matter what. Like you will find a deal, and like as long as you stay here and you follow what you're taught, within the community, you guys will win. Right now, there's likely a small tweak or a slight difference that'll kind of or a piece of information that'll kind of shift everything for you, and that everything will start coming together. But I assure you, it works. So just keep going.
I'm going to have to coin it something, but the belief is that it's inevitable income. It's
Mhm.
inevitable that you will have income. It's going to happen for you if you stick with it because the probability is very, very high. People who do not quit in real estate have an extremely high probability of success with real estate. Real estate has seasons when it is harder to get a deal and then when it's easier to get a deal. Right now, our students are finding on average that it is significantly easier to get a deal because the market is dropping. And so if you have a low level skill, you don't require to be, a sales master to get a deal in this market because the market is tanking. And so when the market rises, if you own real estate, it's inevitable that the market will rise and your equity will grow. And so you're going to have wealth. And so it's inevitable income. Your success is inevitable if you decide to stay with it, if you decide not to quit. So real estate is very much, they have this statement that the impatient, the market will take from the impatient and give to the patient. And I would say that the market will take from the undetermined and give to the determined. And so for those that are determined and they choose to stick with the process, there is no magic to why you're not winning in real estate today. If you're hearing my voice and you're watching this and listening to it and you're like, I'm really struggling with real estate, I'm really unhappy with my outcomes, I have a couple of properties, but I don't have a lot of properties. Ben bought 300 properties. It's either a scam or he's got the best plan ever. What I would tell you is that there is a very, very logical reason for why you're not growing. And business has a series of clues and a series of inputs and a series of outputs. And so it's vision, strategy, plan, and tactical execution. There's no magic. Will the market soften? Yes. Will the market go up? Yes. Will there be differences in the economics of the market? Yes. The market will adjust and there is volatility. The market will be flat. The market will go up and down. But those that actually fix the business equation, marketing, sales, ops, finance, and people, win. Real estate is nothing more than a product. We are in business. And so I get very excited for people who push themselves in business because it's the clue, it's the thing. And if you're stuck, you either don't have the analytical skills, the communication skills, you don't have the emotional intelligence, you don't have the experience in managing yourself or others. And so all of these are skills and all of these are logical things that we can work on. And so, Shawn, talk to us about personal development. I know that you're big into karate and fitness in the last while. And so how important for you is personal development and where does it live in your routine day to day?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, personal development is huge, and it has to be, right? Like without challenging yourself and challenging your mind and challenging your beliefs and really determining who you are and who you want to be, it's just life gets boring and you stay stagnant, right? And it's super important. So, like, obviously, I'm not much of a gym person because that is boring to me too, just lifting things. So, I enjoy martial arts, and as an accountability thing, I do it with my kids. So that gives us, also bonding time and stuff like that, and we're getting fit and healthy together. Aside from that, we have a lot of other things that we do, just to, with my wife, we build our relationship as well. And we're constantly chatting and talking and seeing how we can kind of do better for each other and our family. Is always still reading and taking on, listening to new information and really trying to understand things in a different light and, try to test all of my limiting beliefs and, try to prove them to be true or untrue, right? So, I mean, there's definitely a lot that goes into this, and personal development is massive, and it's very helpful, especially if you're, not extremely confident and you have any type of uncertainty or limiting beliefs or self-doubt and things of that nature. So, I mean, it keeps you grounded, it keeps you confident, it helps you to stay motivated. It helps you to want more and push for more. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely huge. It's up there. It's up there with everything that needs to be done.
Let's have some fun for a minute. So I've purchased 300 properties. I've raised over $40 million of non-bank financing to do that. And so it's been a great ride. How many deals have you done so far, Shawn, in the last little while?
I haven't counted in a bit, but somewhere about 70 some, I believe.
About 70 deals. Okay. Here's what I want to do. I want to have a little bit of fun. In the last couple of years, as the market has pulled back, they say that the rising tide lifts all boats, but a receding tide shows who's standing in the water butt naked. And so what we have seen, okay, contextually speaking, is a bunch of naked investors.
Mm-hmm.
And so the tide has gone out, and there's been a lot of people who have over leveraged, under strategized, under equipped themselves, and they've lost money. Some of these people have literally gone out of business or bankrupt. And we have large cases like epic failures in Canada. And we have small cases like individual investors who have quit the game in the last couple of years. And so I think it's important with you, a former pessimist, to poo-poo on some people. And so why don't we poo-poo on some strategies that we've seen over the last couple of years, some strategies, some thinking, some of the approaches that are just bad ideas, just horrible ideas that just don't really work long term. And so now we're going to do an episode with Shawn called The Naked Investor. Shawn, what are some of the practices, ideas, or strategies that you've seen that you're just like, that's a bad idea? With my experience, that is a horrible idea. You're probably going to lose money. Let's go ahead and pinpoint these. I'm sure people will love to hear this. Give me one.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I actually I had another wholesaler reach out to me the other day, trying to sell me some really terrible deals. Essentially, he was saying, "Oh, we're going to get you a house at $0 out of your pocket, and this is how we're going to do it." So essentially, he was going to give the seller the amount that they wanted, and then have them basically do seller financing for the difference of a certain amount, add in his wholesale, all that stuff. So essentially, by the end of it, you wouldn't have to get a down payment, but you were paying roughly 20% more for this property than you would have had to reasonably if you were just to buy it on the market. And he was trying to sell me multiple of these deals and convince me it was a good idea. I'm like, I don't see how there's any benefit to purchasing a property without equity and being underwater day one. That makes no sense.
So buying a house with no equity, bad idea.
Bad idea. Terrible.
All right. So that, by the way, I'm just going to precursor this. I have friends who are experts in just about every strategy. All of them know how to make money. Cool. I'm just going to get that out of the way. All of them are very capable people in every strategy. When a newbie tries to do these strategies without the experience, the capital, the insight, and awareness, they usually end up making a lot of just horrible decisions. If you buy a piece of real estate and you have not captured equity, bad idea. Utter stupidity. Because you have no exits. There's no way for you to get out of a bad deal. You bought a headache that somebody else couldn't sell. You paid full price. Now you have to sell and you can't. And so one of my first rules of investing, I hope everyone hears this, you have to get a deal. That's it. It's a very logical, fundamental part. It makes it a very practical thing. You have to get a deal. Bad idea. Let's do another bad idea. This is fun. Bad idea. Doing a bunch of partnerships with people who are just as new as you are. And so I see a lot of partnerships born out of convenience, not out of expertise. Let's talk about partnerships. Partnerships and joint venture deals, where you get a bunch of people together who don't have experience, and so they think it's a great idea to get married and commit real estate polygamy. And so you have a bunch of people married to each other in a corporation, all of them trying to figure out how to do a deal. And so talk to us about partnerships, Shawn. What's your take on JV partnerships and what I'm going to coin real estate polygamy?
Sure. So, like, when I started out, obviously we did a lot of joint ventures as well. And I mean, in experience, it was a lot easier to work with other people in the community. And I'm not necessarily against it because I've had some really, really good experiences and I've learned a lot from them. However, I have seen a lot of them go very bad.
Mm,
Right. And if you're inexperienced and you guys are not sure of all the things that you actually need to talk about with each other in
mhm,
order to determine, to set the rules up front, you can have a really bad time. Right.
mm.
So,
What's a tip? What's a tip? Okay, so you've had successful partnerships, you've seen bad ones. What is a tip or something that will determine a successful versus a poor partnership?
you need to be able to have the conversation of what happens if things go terribly wrong.
Mm,
And who's responsible, what you're going to do, what the plan is, all of these things,
mm,
right? You cannot go into these things with the assumption that everything's going to be hunky dory because once you get money involved in, if you don't have a very strong relationship, things can go south, right? Like it's definitely a possibility, especially with inexperienced people. You guys really don't know a lot of the things that you're going to run into these deals, and you need to have a good understanding and a really good ability to communicate with somebody who's your partner and have tough conversations with them because when like I said, when money's involved, people's attitude tends to change, right?
mm.
So you guys really have to understand that even though we with this community and the things that you're learning how to mitigate your risk as much as possible. That doesn't mean it removes it,
Right.
right?
Mm.
So
Interesting.
yeah, that's one of the major things. Understanding roles and responsibilities as well. Whose job is what? Because
Yeah.
if it's both of yours or it's nobody's, it's nobody's.
Nobody's, right? You can't do it that way. Now, my job is not to offend everyone listening, but I'm going to keep going down this line of thinking because I think it's interesting. Okay. So, getting a deal is absolutely necessary. Buying a piece of real estate on terms with no equity is a really bad idea. The only thing dumber than that is arbitrage. So, you are going to manage somebody else's property that you don't own and re rent it to somebody else. And so you're basically running a motel without owning the asset. And so I think real estate arbitrage is a horrendous idea because most real estate is not a good business. It's a great investment unless you really know what you're doing. And so when you're like, I just want to go and get somebody else's rental property and then try to like become a pseudo landlord to another tenant and I'm going to live in the spread in between. I think it's a horrible idea. If you have the capacity to manage rental properties, you should own the properties because the value is in the long-term growth of the equity, not in the management. Every property manager will tell you it's not an attractive business. Property management is a very difficult business. I think the only time property management really makes sense is either you own real estate and so the property management is part of your fulfillment, or you have thousands of units and you have a large team and you have figured out the economics. But like you are unclogging other people's toilets without getting the long-term benefit of appreciation. Shawn, what's your take on real estate arbitrage? Let's see if you agree or disagree.
Oh, 100% agree. I could not even imagine dealing with the stuff that it takes for maybe a couple $100 a month in cash flow to be a property manager,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I mean, really, the benefit to being a landlord is that you own the property and you're going to get, over time, have that asset there to back you up. And I mean, really, if you're taking on a lease, basically from someone else, and then you're going to, whether you do short-term rentals or you're just going to put in another like sublet, I guess that would be sort of in a way to someone else. I'm assuming that people doing this are going for Airbnb. You have no idea. Like if you go and put in a lease with this landlord, and then all of a sudden they come in and tell you, "Oh, we've decided that Airbnb can no longer operate this way." Now what?
Yep.
Right? So, like, I mean, there's no real benefit to that. I mean, you could potentially make it work for a period of time, but I personally don't see why you would.
Yep.
Uh, Because really, you can end up on the hook for a lot of stuff and end up having to break a lot of leases and maybe have to go through a lot of court battles,
Yeah.
only to realize that you did that, thought you were going to make a whole bunch of money arbitraging these things, and then you spend a lot of time and effort, and then you don't even get the asset. You don't even get the appreciation of the asset or the mortgage payment.
So arbitrage, bad idea.
I agree. Yeah.
All right, let's do a couple more. This is fun. This one I'm split on, and some of you will dislike me after this topic. I'm very split on multifamily. Very split. Here's how I like multifamily, so I give you the positives first. To somebody who's a good operator and understands that multifamily is a people business, and they have a strong organizational sense, and they really have learned that like it's a people business, that your tenants are called customers. And so you take care of them every single month, and they in turn will pay their invoices called leases every single month. And so they have to have clean, affordable places to live. And it's just very common sense. And so it is a people business. Okay. I think for people who have that capacity, and then for people who are really good at managing money, because it can be a pit, right? Multifamily can be a pit. If you don't know what you're doing, and then you're like, now a $10,000 expense is $15,000 because you don't know how to price things. And like, I think you have to be pretty, I'll use the word frugal because most people don't like cheap. Be frugal, okay? Be super frugal with multifamily. Like treat people well, but don't waste money on stuff. And so I think it requires an operational head first. We have one of our friends, Eugene, who is, I think, very operational. And so if I was going to do multifamily, I would need Eugene in my corner. That's the guy, because Eugene is very operational, very ethical about how he manages expenses. And so that's the guy I would want, Eugene Blank, right? Now, that's piece number one. Piece number two, I have to have some money, because the problem with multifamily is that it's going to require syndication, which means that you have to partner with a lot of people, or you have to have some capital. And I think that multifamily could be a good place to park your money and let it grow. And then the third dynamic with multifamily is like, you have to be a really smart value add investor. You got to be able to see the angles. And so if you need covered parking and you can charge for that, you got to think through that. If you can take 1 bedrooms and make them 2 bedrooms and increase the rent, and that's what's needed in that area, you got to see that angle. And so I think multifamily investing requires like 2 or 3 pretty strong skill sets and some resources. And so if you have that, I like multifamily. Okay. If you don't have those 3 things, multifamily is the worst absolute investment of all time. My least favorite way of doing multifamily is when you take 30 newbies with no experience in any of those 3. They all take their hard-earned savings, and then they become LPs, limited partners, and they take all of their money and they give it to a GP with no real experience, general partner, okay? And then what happens is the general partner takes their money, puts it into a multifamily, creates what's called a pro forma, which is a bunch of BS that doesn't mean anything, some expectations about future value. And at the end of the day, you've got these people who are continuing to work their 9-to-5 job, and they own 3% of 30 units. Like you've owned point something units. Sick. 1 unit, right? I think if you're going to own a percentage of units, you should just go own your own stinking units. It is better to own 3 doors than a percentage of 30 doors. Why? Why am I saying that? Because at least in your own doors, you have control and you have decisions and you have ownership. Then nothing is worse than being a side passenger in a car that's falling apart and you have no ability to press the brakes. So, and I have friends in multifamily, some who are wildly successful. And I have other friends who I'm very, very confident are very much struggling in multifamily. Okay, both. And so I have a love-hate relationship with multifamily. I think with the right operator and the right team, profound, great business, cool. With the wrong team, with lax experience, it's a nightmare, dude. And you know what's crazy about multifamily? This is going to scare some people. I think there's a secret club. And the secret club is this. We really hate our multifamily, but we can't tell anybody. We got to keep promoting that multifamily is awesome because I own 3% of 4 doors, right? But if I tell people it sucks, then nobody will want to buy it from me later. And so there's a bunch of closet single family investors who are presently promoting multifamily and they hate it, but they're going to keep promoting it because you got to drink the Kool-Aid, the multifamily Kool-Aid. Otherwise, your 3% of 4 doors doesn't get resold. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little bit exaggerative. What do you think, Shawn? What is your experience? And no shade to the multifamily coaches, but y'all know this is all true. And so what do you think, Shawn, is the case here?
Yeah, so I mean, again, like I kind of, syndicated, small percentage, no control, like no interest at all, right? Like, I mean, if I was doing multifamily, I'd be looking at, 10 plus units where essentially I could just raise the funds and I'd buy it at a rate that makes sense. But then again, those deals are far, like much fewer and farther between that makes any sense to really spend a ton of time looking for them. Right. If one comes and drops in my lap, I probably wouldn't say no to it because I believe that, I just look at it, the analysis again, right? If the numbers work, okay, cool. It's just another building, probably needs more maintenance than would be expected. But if you calculate that into your original offer and you're reasonably intelligent with your assessments, you can make them work. But yeah, zero interest in going and joining somebody's community to own a small percentage of something and having my money locked up where I have zero control
and paying for it. You're using your money, your credit, right? You have no management ability, and so somebody else manages it. And so I think we have to be very, very careful not to be an LP, limited partner. Now, if you're the GP and you have control and you're using somebody else's money, great. It's just that's a win-lose. Like multifamily, a lot of these are win-loses. The GP is the winner. The LP is the loser. It just is what it is. And so I'm not trying to offend other communities, but that's just what I've noticed. One more piece on this that I think is really interesting. And the kids today would call this cap, right? Cap. Like it's all cap, meaning it's just a bunch of lies. Here's a cap. Cap rate on anything less than 5 units. That's cap right there. And so you got yourself a duplex. And because it's evaluated based on comparative market analysis, other duplexes, you go in and throw 4 kids in a 1-bedroom and you charge each of them $500 and you increase the rent. And then you start promoting this as like net operating income divided by purchase price equals cap rate. There is no cap rate on a duplex. We are applying commercial metrics to residential properties. And commercial starts at 5 units and above. And so I think this is a really deceptive practice to buy a duplex, a triplex, a quad, and promote it with cap rates. Because the cap rate is just a lie. You have to look at the comparative market analysis. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding with this topic, and a lot of investors like to promote the cash flow, even though there's no value in the property, which is a wild thing. And so I'm accusing all of you with fourplexes and cap rates of real estate, like just foolishness. You need to quit. All right. What's your take on the wrong valuation metrics to confuse the mass population to think a crap deal is a good deal?
Yeah. So, I mean, I know there's a book out there and it's called How to Lie with Statistics.
Wow. There's another book out there called The Bible. And so, okay, keep going. Let me see where you're going to go.
I know. So like the idea I find behind that is essentially the same thing. You're omitting a bunch of information and making it sound like it's some kind of amazing, amazing thing. But it's really,
are we talking about the liberal government or what do you, sorry.
Well, so, like it's metrics, right? So you're saying with cap rate and all that stuff, like, they're coming across, it's false information. It doesn't necessarily apply to the actual asset, right? Because of the asset class and all that. And it's skewed numbers based on the limited size of it, right? So cap rate's not really an effectual, KPI to use with those smaller asset classes.
Got you. I don't know. I think you and I probably need to launch a longer standing podcast. I think it should be called the Ben and Shawn podcast in order of age and maturity. And so I believe the BS Real Estate Podcast, standing for Ben Shawn Real Estate Podcast, could do quite well. I think in the rhetoric of things. Shawn, you're awesome, man. I'm glad that we've had a chance over the years to become friends and you be able to have some, great proximity and work with the community together. And really thankful for you for all all of the involvement and the dedication and commitment to the Real Estate Revival community and the Humble Coaching Group. And I know that our team and our community really value you, and thankful to you for just being honest and helping so many people. You're doing a great job, Shawn. So thank you. If people want to get a hold of you after the show, what's the best way they can get a hold of the Moncton home buyer? How do they do that?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I find Facebook's probably the best way to get in touch with me if you actually want any type of response. But yeah, I'm not saying it's a high likelihood you'll get one there either. But the community, I'm always here for. If you guys have any questions or you want to set something up, definitely reach out. I'm always happy to talk to you guys. You can see me on Instagram as well at the Moncton Home Buyer. Other than that, you can find me here. I'll be here in the Humble community, and just hoping to push and drive all you guys forward. And yeah, I look forward to seeing all you guys grow and see what you guys are doing 5-6 years down the road. So
I love it. So you guys heard it here first. If you want to sell a real estate timeshare, the Moncton Home Buyer on Facebook is the place to do that. Thank you, Shawn.
I'll just be on Instagram with that stuff.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Shawn. Appreciate you. Much love for you. Thank you for being here. There we go. Amazing, amazing. Guys, till next time, this is the Real Estate Results Podcast. We got Shawn Gunther, Moncton Home Buyer, the #1 buyer in the East Coast. Absolutely amazing. Thank you, Shawn. Appreciate you. Guys, until next time, stay humble, stay hungry. God bless you. See you soon.